The deafening sound of a thunderstorm brought me back to reality. I was alone at home as Mom and Dad went to a funeral in a nearby town. The weather was gloomy and the power outage added an extra layer of unease to the atmosphere. I was reading a book to try to make the most of the situation, when I heard a knock on the door. Assuming it was one of the neighbors seeking shelter from the storm, I opened the door without any serious thought. To my surprise, a messy-looking stranger was standing at the door. I became cautious and carefully asked him what was the problem. He claimed that he had car trouble and his phone battery died, so he asked me if he could use my phone. I thought to myself that he looked like someone needing help, but deep down, I was somehow uneasy. So being empathetic but cautious, I handed over my mobile phone to him. As he made his call, I noticed that his behavior was erratic, and he had an unsettling gaze. I began to regret my decision to hand him my phone, but I maintained my composure as I didn't want him to know that he was having any kind of effect on me. Soon after he made the call, his entire demeanor changed. Where at first he looked needy, now he looked like someone having an ulterior motive. He started asking me probing questions, making me uncomfortable. I could sense danger from his behavior, so I made sure to not reveal any personal information. However, as the conversation accelerated, he became more aggressive with his tone and tried to block my path to the door. I tried to close the door quickly, but he was quicker to come in. His intentions were clear now. He wasn't someone looking for shelter, but he was there to exploit my vulnerability. Soon, I realized I was dealing with a potential threat. I scanned my surroundings, searching for a way to escape. As the tension rose, my survival instincts kicked in. I subtly moved towards my mobile phone to call someone for help without alerting the intruder. Suddenly, in that moment, the power flickers back on briefly, and I saw a menacing grin on the stranger's face. I tried to dial the emergency number, but dropped the phone in the struggle. As I understood the gravity of the situation, desperation set in. In a desperate attempt to buy some time for thinking, I told the stranger that I dropped the flower vase on my foot, and it was bleeding, so I should go to the room and put some Band-Aid on it. He bought that lie, and I lunged towards my bedroom. Without any second thought, I locked the room door first and then the windows. After a few minutes, I heard the intruder banging on the door of the room I was in. I was scared to death at that moment, but I had to think of a way out of this situation. Soon I realized I had dropped the phone outside, and now I don't have any way of contacting outside. I tried to find any makeshift weapon so I could defend myself if necessary. The storm outside intensified, making it difficult to hear the moments of that stranger outside the room. I sat there praying for a miracle to happen as I waited for my parents to come back home. They were supposed to return late at night, and it was around 6 p.m. at that time. Almost an hour passed, and the thunderstorm stopped. I was tired of waiting in the room, so I thought I should check on the stranger outside. I thought he left after getting tired of making his way into the room. I opened the door, holding the baseball bat in my hand tightly and praying silently. Lights were still out, and it was completely dark in the lounge. I couldn't hear any sound of movements or steps. Still, I cautiously moved towards the sofa, where I dropped my phone, and to my disappointment, I couldn't find it there. Suddenly, I heard footsteps at the front door and a light coming from the torch. My breathing hatched. Then I heard someone saying, "Is anyone home?" and then saying my name. I realized it was the voice of an uncle living in the house beside ours. I said I was there, and he came to me and told me he came back home from the office and saw the door of our home open, so he came to check if everything was okay. I told him the whole story, and he called the police. He showed the possibility that maybe that stranger might be inside the house right now, and staying there isn't the best option, so I should wait at their house till the police come. I agreed and went over to their house. After some time, the light came back. When the police arrived, that neighbor's uncle told everything to them, and they searched my home thoroughly and found no one. They asked me to check if something was missing from the home and took my account of the whole situation. The police assured us that they would increase patrols in the area, and my parents, now back from the funeral, decided it was best to install a security system in our home. One quiet night, I was walking home after getting off my shift from the convenience store. I took the shortest route, though it passed through the alleyway, but I was tired and wasn't in the mood to take the long route. Midway, I noticed a figure walking behind me. First, I rejected the thought. But then again, I saw the shadows on the side wall walking with me. Scared, I didn't turn around to see who that was. I started walking fast and praying for safety. On reaching my house, I turned around to see if that stranger was still stalking me and saw no one around. I took a breath of relief and went home. Upon reaching home, I closed the door tightly and locked it, and rejected the idea of someone following me as my imagination. I took a shower and went to sleep. After some time, when I was in deep slumber, I heard a sharp noise. I got up abruptly from the sleep. It took me some minutes to understand what happened. When I gained my senses back, I realized that the noise I heard was of something breaking. Living alone for a few years had taught me to muster up my courage in situations like these and go check what happened. I left my room and cautiously went towards where I thought the noise came from. To my utter shock, the window at the back of my house was broken and glass was shattered all over the floor. All my courage left my body, and I was scared to death to see this. The realization hit me hard that the stalker whom I ignored saying that it was my imagination was in fact real, and that the stalker had followed me to my home. After this realization, it was a struggle to go back to sleep. The shattered window served as a chilling confirmation that my fears were not just the products of my imagination. Someone had followed me home, and the safety of my own home had been violated. Panic set in as I hurriedly dialed the emergency number, my trembling fingers struggling to press each digit. While on the line with the dispatcher, I secured myself in my room, realizing the vulnerability of my situation. The stranger who had been stalking me in the alleyway had now escalated their actions, breaking into my home, and he may be inside the home now. I tried to remain composed, providing the dispatcher with as much information as possible. As I was talking on the phone, a sudden banging sound from the front door startled me. My heart raced as I realized that the intruder had found another way inside. The phone slipped from my hand as I jumped a little in fear. Whoever that stalker was now at the front of my house after smashing the glass of my window. I could feel the fear coursing through my veins. This realization made me lose my senses. I wasn't able to think straight and didn't know what to do. I was scared to death. Banging intensified with every passing moment. Terror engulfed me as I realized that the stalker was determined to break through my front door and potentially harm me. Pulling myself up, I once again tried to call the emergency and told them that the stalker was now banging on the front door. They asked me to take cover and stay there until they reached. Shaking with fear, I followed their instructions and huddled in a corner of my room, feeling utterly defenseless. Minutes felt like hours as I waited in the dimly lit room, clutching my phone like a lifeline. After some time, the banging stopped. Soon the distant wail of sirens pierced the uneasy silence, offering a glimmer of hope. As the authorities arrived, that stalker had gone. They conducted a thorough search of my home, finding no trace of the intruder. Their assurances did little to ease my shaken nerves. They suggested filing a report and increasing security measures, but the sense of violation lingered. Soon after, I installed some security cameras to get the feeling of security back. The eerie feeling of being watched never truly left me, as I constantly wondered if that stalker would return. I was sitting on the sofa in the lounge, completing my work, when the doorbell rang. That should have been the repairman I phoned, I thought to myself. A few days ago, the kitchen sink pipe began to leak, and since I was home today due to the persistent flu, I considered having it fixed. I stood up and went to open the door. I ignored the thought that the repairman was not the usual individual who would come to my house as I opened the door, thinking that he must be busy. I let him in and showed him around the kitchen and the pipe that was leaking. He said he would have to check first when I asked how long it would take. I kept standing there for some time, but my condition made it impossible for me to keep standing, so I went back and continued my work, but at the back of my head, I was aware of the fact that someone was working at my home. Up until I received the call, everything appeared normal. I recognized the number. It belonged to the repairman I had contacted. I assumed he was telling me that he was going to be absent and that he had sent someone else. When I answered the phone, I was completely taken aback by what he said. He apologized that he was unable to make it today due to urgent work, and that he was unable to assign a substitute. Hearing this, I knew I had put myself in danger, but I gathered the courage and asked him if he had sent someone to my house, and he said no, as nobody else was free. After the call ended, I lost all mental clarity. I never considered the possibility that the man in the kitchen was an intruder because he was carrying a toolbox and was dressed like a repairman. I couldn't decide if I should go face that man or call the police. After giving it some more thought, I decided to call the police. I took care, though, to ensure that the man in the kitchen didn't hear me. I reported to the police that I had an intruder at my house who was posing as a repairman. I was in the middle of explaining everything over the phone when the man appeared from the kitchen, and I immediately hung up. In order for him to work more easily, he asked if I could shut off the water valve in the house. I had a gut feeling that something wasn't right. I had to go all the way to the back of the house to close the valve, and I didn't want to leave while that man was there, or for him to know that I knew who he was. In the end, I chose to comply with his request because I wanted to buy some time until the police arrived. I told him to wait in the kitchen, that I would take care of that right away. With trembling steps, I headed for the backyard, dizzy-assed, and dashed inside. I couldn't see the man when I returned to the kitchen. I quickly spun around in a panic. I looked back and saw a knife pointed at me with a bright silver blade. My entire life suddenly flashed before my eyes. He shushed me when I tried to talk and gestured for me to sit on the chair. After I followed his instructions, he took the rope and began tying me to the chair. I made an unsuccessful attempt to resist. I was no match for him in terms of strength. The flu had sapped all of my supposed power. After tying me up, he began questioning me about where I had hidden my cash and other valuables. I saw no other way out, so I was praying the cops would arrive soon. He struck me in the head with the back of the knife when I remained silent the first time, and asked the same question again, this time with more aggression. I gave him the location of my money. I was so afraid that the words were coming out of my lips quite slowly. He entered my bedroom and began searching through the things I had in the closet. I could hear things falling. A police siren was heard in the distance soon after. With anguished expression, the man rushed into the kitchen and questioned if I had contacted the police. I pretended not to have, but he didn't buy it. He hurriedly gathered what he could find in my closet and lunged at the main door. My doorbell rang shortly after, and as I was tied to the chair, I was unable to move, so I let out a loud cry. I heard my front door being unlocked, but I'm not sure if the police could hear me. They soon entered and discovered me fastened to the chair. After untying me, they inquired about the incident. I told them everything that had happened, including what the man had taken from my home. They assured me that they would locate that man based on my evidence. As I lay in bed later that night, I thought back on what had happened today and felt fortunate that just money had been taken, not myself. Materialistic items do, in fact, mean nothing when compared to human life.